Hi everyone, this is Cheryl and welcome to my sewing room. What you're looking at is a mug rug. It's for your coffee and a light little snack, or if you're a tea drinker, tea and crumpets. This is really easy to make, especially because I'm using panel fabric in the upper left-hand corner. So let's get started. You'll need the following supplies. Now, when you're picking out your fabrics, you want a lot of different fabrics working with each other. You don't want each piece the same color. So you'll need one 6.5-inch square, and that's where I used my panel fabric, one 2.5-inch by 6.5-inch strip that goes at the bottom of that square. Then for your little checkerboard, you're going to need 4 of each 2 different colors, and they're 2.5-inch squares. One strip for your binding, 2 5/8 by 42 inches. You'll need a piece of fabric for the very back that's 10 inches by 12 inches, and a piece of cotton batting that is 10 inches by 12 inches. What you're looking at is panel fabric. I love working with panel fabrics because there's so much you can do with these. You can cut each one of these squares out and put sashing around them and put them into a quilt. Or you could put sashing around them and build it into a table runner, a placemat, and they're perfect for pot holders. These are 6-inch squares from border to border. So you could cut a little ways out around it if you want to make a pot holder, and add some more fabric around the edge so you can enlarge it a little bit and turn it into a pot holder. On this panel, there are 30 squares on 1 yard. So that's a lot of pot holders you could build, and you have more than enough for a quilt. So the fabrics I'm going to use, I have these scraps left over from an old project. I'm going to use this polka dot green, this polka dot yellow, and of course I love polka dots, polka dot blue. I cut this square to size 6.5, and if you look closely you'll notice it seems like it's a little crooked, but it's not. It's just the fabric is not perfectly squared. So when you're working with panel fabrics, that's a very common problem, so you kind of have to be flexible in how you cut it out. This is 6.5 inches here squared. This is a 2.5-inch wide strip. I cut it just a little bit longer than this piece, center it on there, and then stitch 1/4 inch seam. After stitching, press the seam on the back side, unfold, press on top. Now trim the edge of this bottom strip of fabric even with the side of your panel square. So line up your ruler and then trim these edges off. And don't forget to do the other side. And cut. On one side of the mug rug, I want to make a checkerboard design, so I'm using the yellow and the blue for that. So cut 2 strips, 2.5 inches wide, about 15 inches long. And you want to make sure you cut those selvage edges off and trim it off straight. Now I like using the lines on my cutting mat to cut, because it's just so much easier, and it would help if I put on my glasses. So I've moved my ruler over 2.5 inches this way because I want about 4 2.5-inch squares out of each fabric. So I'm going to move over another 2.5 inches, and let me straighten this out a little more and cut. Go over again and cut, and then go over one more time and cut. Arrange your squares like this. Now you're going to take each row and stitch them together. So you're going to use a 1/4 inch seam front sides together and stitch, and then unfold this one, stitch this one on, and then this one. Then go to the next row and do the same thing. After you've stitched them, at your ironing board, you want to press each one of these seams on the back side, okay? So you do that on the back side on both strips. Then lift your strip up and press on top in the front and push against the seams as you press so that your seams all go in one direction. But when you go to piece these rows together or stitch them together, you want to make sure the seam in the top row is in the opposite direction of the seam in the bottom row. So once you've got that all straightened out, here's your checkerboard pattern. Now you want to bring them on top of each other, and you're going to pin your seams together because fabrics shift, so you want to make sure the seams are pinned. So pin all of your seams. Then after you have pinned everything, go ahead and stitch a 1/4 inch seam along here. After you finish stitching, then again with your iron, press on the back side, unfold and press on top, and press this seam all in one direction. Originally I had pressed this seam towards this strip, but when I was getting ready to stitch this side on, I needed to reverse the direction of it being pressed. So I pressed this seam towards my little panel square up here. So take your checkerboard and you're going to stitch it on the side. But first, this seam down here and this seam right here, you need to line them up. So the seam on the bottom needs to go in the opposite direction than the seam on top. And I would put a pin there to hold it, alrighty? And also I'd still recommend, if you're a beginner, to pin your fabric until you get used to working with your fabrics. After you have it pinned, then go ahead and stitch 1/4 inch along here. Press the seam on the back side, unfold, and press on top. And I've pushed this seam towards the squares, but it doesn't matter which side you push it towards, just as long as it all goes in one direction. Now cut out a piece of cotton batting and a piece of fabric for the back. So my mug rug came out to about 8 by 10, which I was real happy. That's the size I was shooting for. So cut those two pieces of fabric, the batting and the fabric on the back, a little bit larger than the front side. Take the fabric for the back and place it front side down. Place the cotton batting on top, then your mug rug top piece. Center it in there. Then use straight pins to pin all of the layers together. If you were pinning a large quilt, you would use safety pins because you don't want to have to deal with that many straight pins. Then you're going to do quilting stitches. So I'm going to give you some suggestions on what you can do. If you're a beginner, I suggest you do stitch in the ditch. And the ditch are the seams. So you could just start over here and go over 2 inches and go down another 2 inches. And then this is over here. These are 2-inch squares, finished size, and then stitch. And then come across here and here and here. That's one way. That's the easiest. Or if you want to do a really small pattern, this is large here, but you could do this style and make them about 1.5 inches wide and go all the way across. Another one is to go on a diagonal, which is my favorite way of doing. You would just go from corner to corner, move over 1.5 inches, do another row. This is a serpentine stitch. This is the stitch I use the most. It's a wavy line. You could do this straight up and down and side to side, or going corner to corner. While you're doing it, you want to use a walking foot. And this is a presser foot that most machines you can get them for, especially if you have a machine that was probably made in the last 20 years, you can probably get one. You can buy them at sewing machine supply stores and Amazon.com. After you have completed all of your quilting stitches, then you need to trim all of your edges. So place your ruler on the edge of the top piece for the mug rug, line it up along that edge, and trim it off. Then you would continue going around, trimming all the other sides. To cut out your binding strip, have your fabric folded together with the selvage edges together, like it was when you purchased the fabric. Then take the raw edge here and pull it past one of the lines on your cutting mat, and make sure that the folded edge up here is also going on one of the lines going this way. Then line it up, because remember, when you buy your fabric, it's rarely cut straight, so you always need to trim it straight. Now I'm going to cut my binding. You can cut it anywhere from 2 1/4 inches, but I like just a little bit more, so I'm going to cut mine 2 5/8 because I kind of like that little extra, so that I don't have any problems getting it stitched down. And trim. And all you need is just this one strip of fabric. Take your strip and line it up on your mat, and you're going to cut these selvage edges off because you don't need them. So again, pull it past a line on your cutting mat and cut it straight and trim. Then at your ironing board, take the binding and fold it in half and press it all the way down the full length of the strip. Place your binding, the end, in the middle on any of the sides here. Make sure you give yourself at least 3 to 4 inches of where you do not stitch over just yet. So come over and then begin stitching, and then when you come to a corner here, you want to stop stitching about 3/8 of an inch away from this side here, okay? Then take it out of your machine, fold the strip out like this to where this edge is even with this edge. Then place your thumb or finger there and pull this over. Then I would place a pin to hold it. Then go ahead and go back to your machine and start stitching at this folded edge down here, and again stitch 3/8 of an inch seam. And fold all of your corners just like this. When you're coming around your last corner, overlap the 2 ends of your binding strip, and you're going to cut off to where you have about 1/2 inch overlap from this end here. So if you're not sure how long 1/2 inch is, I would measure it. It's just that I've done it so many times I know what it looks like. So go ahead and turn it off. Then unfold the ends of your binding. And it also helps if you fold your mug rug in half. Bring the 2 ends of the binding together. I would pin them together and then stitch 1/2 inch right along here. After stitching it, then finger press the seam open, fold your binding, and finish stitching it along this edge. At your ironing board, take your iron and press the binding towards the outside on all of your sides. pull the binding up over to the back side, and you're going to begin pinning it down like you see here. You want to take the folded edge of the binding and bring it past this stitch line right here. So pull it over and pin it down. Now I'm going to show you how to fold your corners. At your corners, you're going to have a little bump here. So I'm going to show you how to do a nice mitered corner fold. So put a pin on this side about a 1/2 inch away from the corner and go out at 1.5 inches from this side. Now take a straight pin, press down, push in all the way out to the side, fold over, and pin. And you have this really nice mitered corner fold. Now turn it over to the front. Do stitch in the ditch, and that is where the binding and this fabric come together. It's that seam right here. You're not going to stitch on the binding, but you're going to stitch real close to it. So start in one corner and always back stitch a little bit. Stitch all the way down to the other corner. And when you get down here, stop, leave your needle down, turn your mug rug, and continue stitching. And you want to go all the way around until you come back to where you started. Make sure you turn over and look on the back, and if you find your edges did not get in that seam, your binding edges, then you didn't pull this far enough past your stitch line. So make sure you do it right the first time so you don't have to rip things out. For more mug rug projects and placemats, play this video to the very end where you will see a green screen and then click on the links. If you like this video, would you please click on thumbs up, and don't forget to click on that share button to share it with your friends. And if you haven't subscribed yet, go to that button in the lower right hand corner of your screen. Don't forget to enter your email address and click on the little bell so you receive email notifications to your phone. I'm Cheryl, this is Manny. See you next time, and happy sewing!